The Paddy Power Half Hour on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Shearer and Owen.
Welcome into the Paddy Power Half Hour as we head into November. Plenty of questions to ponder going into this weekend. Liverpool go to one of their happiest hunting grounds where they take on Aston Villa at Villa Park. After 3 away wins in a row over the last couple of weeks, Manchester United look to make it 4 in a row this weekend. And we're going to need all our fingers and toes to try and count how many goals Man City are going to score against Southampton at the Etihad tomorrow. It is the Paddy Power Half Hour, our football coverage here on Off the Ball with thanks to Paddy Power. We're live across our social channels at the moment on Off the Ball, and you can also listen to us on OTB Sports Radio on the Go Loud app as well. We will be discussing odds over the next half hour or so for information on responsible gambling, check out dunlewy.net. I'm joined to look forward to this weekend's games by Phil Egan and also by the man that makes Enda's Coll, Enda Coll. Afternoon, gentlemen.
How are we?
Looking forward to this weekend. I suppose we don't maybe have the high-profile fixtures that we've had over the last few weekends, but as we head towards yet another international break, it's another key weekend in the Premier League, Phil.
Yeah, and you know, you're looking at the first game tomorrow, United away to Bournemouth, and if this game was a month ago, you'd be thinking Bournemouth. But Bournemouth haven't scored in 3 games, which is something that doesn't tend to happen that often under Eddie Howe. And United have got a few results on the road. That international break, off the back of that, then they had the performance against Liverpool. They've now won the 3 games on the road. Now, the only thing about the Chelsea game is in the second half, Rashford scores, like that free kick, it's unbelievable. Yeah. It's an unbelievable goal, worthy of winning any game. But they actually didn't create that. They're not getting many shots on target. There's a little bit of a doubt over the fitness of Marcus Rashford, which he was one of the main lads to benefit from the international break because he went off with England. Obviously, you know, it was a bad night in Sofia for what happened off the pitch, but on the pitch England played well and Rashford got a goal and he kind of came back and kept it going, and you know, he's kind of got his confidence. Martial is back, which complements him. It means that Rashford can play out a bit wider. We've talked about this before on the show where Rashford probably isn't going to be a number 9 long term, but play him out wide in a 4-3-3 or whatever way Solskjaer wants to play. You know, he's going with 3 at the back or 5 at the back, whatever way you want to look at it. So United have turned things around and they're getting results, not necessarily playing great, but that isn't an issue. If you can start grinding it, they also look, defensively, they just look like they have a good shape about them. McTominay, in fairness to him, you know, took a bit of flack when he broke into the team and people said, is this guy good enough to play for Manchester
He had a few
United?
rough games he started. Remember Reading in the FA Cup last year, he looked a little bit off, but he's become a pretty solid player for them, and he's a guy who gets involved in the play around the box as well. Yeah,
and you know, so often we've seen players for United then the last few years who haven't put it in. One thing, you know, McTominay is he's going to give it 100%, you know, throws himself into tackles, adds a bit of steel there. Okay, he mightn't split defences with passes, but he's now chipping in with goals as well. He scored against Norwich last weekend, was unlucky not to score against Chelsea on Wednesday night as well. So big improvement from him. And yeah, you'd be kind of leaning towards United for this one.
And just on the McTominay point, it shows that there's some interesting factors where player development comes into it, because when McTominay came through, there was a few reports coming out that McTominay wasn't on the crosshairs of some of the coaches at United for a player that might progress so quickly into the United setup, and it was Mourinho that actually brought him in and saw him as a player because he was tall and suited his system, and now he's become a player that United, he's absolutely vital to that midfield. So it just, like the likes of Chong and Andre Gomez, they were always said to be the next big things. Rashford as well, always were expected to make the break into the first team, but McTominay, they didn't think if he would make it or not. So it just shows you.
Jose knew. Remember, didn't Jose give him he gave him a special award at the end of the season awards a few years ago, where I think the players voted. I can't even remember which. I'm pretty sure it must have been David De Gea, because he seemed to win every year apart from last season. But I'm pretty sure Mourinho gave McTominay his own award. He was trying to make a point, but yeah, there's a little bit of a similarity with Darren Fletcher. I know both Scottish internationals, but when Fletcher came into the team under Alex Ferguson, people thought, is this guy really going to be good enough. And he hit levels where he was a pivotal part of that team that won the Champions League, and unfortunately for him then he had health issues, but McTominay's certainly trajectory is on the up anyway.
Well, and it's interesting as well that, you know, there's been some big money signings like Shaw, like Pogba. They've been missing over the last few weeks. You get Williams playing really well since he's come in at left back, looks a really interesting player. And then you look at both Pereira and McTominay flourishing during Pogba's absence as well. Could this be a return to United maybe using more of their academy players rather than the big name signings?
Well, that's the squad they have, and that's what they're using, and that's why I wouldn't read too much into the Chelsea win during the week as well, because United were playing their first team. That was their first team. Usually you look at a team like that and you think they're doing, it's a Carabao Cup, they're playing their second team, kind of like what Liverpool and Arsenal did as well. But that was United's strongest team that they could field on the injuries, so I wouldn't read too much into that. They've been forced to play the young players, not out of the fact that they have a transfer ban like Chelsea. They've been forced to play it because they haven't recruited as much as they would have liked to. I've been really impressed with Brandon Williams coming at left back more than, like, Pereira has had his moments where he's been quite good, but he's been at the United for a long time now and has been expected to push on to bigger and better things that he's providing. He is a good midfielder, but I don't think he's good enough to push on from United. I think when United start to progress more, start to bring in more quality players, he'll be one of the ones that gets the cut. Whereas the likes of Brandon Williams actually looks like a really good talent. I can't see Andre Gomez coming through. He doesn't seem to be pushing on to the levels that he was expected to. The likes of, you know, Luke Shaw, when he comes back in, will he get back into the first team? I'm not sure he will, because Ashley Young is there, and Ashley Young's playing quite well for a player who isn't that well liked at United or outside of United at all.
Tuanzebe's played pretty well as well, Phil. He could well play at centre back this weekend again. Yeah,
well, there's also concerns over Harry Maguire, and I think the important thing from United's point of view is there's no quick fix. So, yeah, they're on this little run at the moment where, you know, they're making themselves hard to beat, but, you know, you can still see them coming up with facing a few problems in terms of not scoring enough goals. But the problem is every time this happens, there seems to be not like a meltdown, but also like almost where people can't understand why they're losing games. There's going to be a lot of tough days before it gets to a level where they're consistently performing week in, week out. And as good as Rashford's been in the last few games and Martial is back in, they're so light up front that if anything happens to them, then, like, Daniel James has been brilliant since he's come in, but I'm pretty sure Solskjaer didn't intend them playing him as much as he has.
I don't think anybody did.
No.
Everyone was expecting him to be an impact sub off the bench. But what would worry me about that as well is the reports that United are bringing in the likes of Mandzukic or a big name striker in January, or at least they're going to attempt to. I mean, what does that mean for Rashford then? Is Mandzukic going to be the man on the bench? Is he going to play Olivier Giroud role like at Chelsea? Or is Mandzukic going to be the main man? Rashford's going to be pushed out wide as well as Martial, and then Dan James falls to the bench. It's hard to know what United are going to do if they do bring in that striker.
Yeah, but see, you've so many games. Like, people kind of get fixated with strongest 11, but you have to change almost, especially given the way United want to play. He wants to play more high energy, high pace. That if Daniel James has to sit on the bench for one game and then comes in and starts the next one, that's okay, because at least you know when he does start. And he's also a great option to have off the bench with half an hour to go when the game gets stretched, because his pace is frightening. But if they did have Mandzukic, then, like, I still think Rashford's best position is that position out on the left. I've said, like, if United were playing a 4-3-3, he'd be perfect on the left, and then you can put Martial on the right. But Martial likes to play through the centre. But also, Mandzukic could be used for games where they play teams that want to defend deep and they can't break them down. Mandzukic is very good in the air, he's physical. That's a different option.
I did wonder, lads, whether a certain Swedish striker who's available at the moment could have ended up back at United until March of next year, but it seems Spain is where Zlatan is going to go now.
And see, I know when he was at the club he scored a lot of goals, but he also obstructed the likes of Martial and Rashford developing a bit more. He even took Martial's number off him, but and he scored goals. But then at times you looked at the way they played, and there was a reliance that because Zlatan was there, let's just play it long to him, because, you know, he can do that. It's short-termism, and
Is there a risk that Mandzukic might do the same?
Yeah, he's obviously not quite as old, but see, the problem with going in January, that United find it tough in the transfer window because teams know that they're desperate for players. They know they're the richest club in the world, so they just keep adding taxes. And everyone's saying, "Oh, yeah, if United can get to January and get some business done," but they could well get to January and be in with a shout of finishing top 6, top 4. I don't know how close they can get to top 4, but staying.
Very few big clubs do substantial business in January
also,
as well.
Would you trust United to get business done early in January?
No.
You can imagine what would happen is the window opens and there's all these players linked to United and there's negotiations and eventually they get done on transfer deadline day and you've wasted a month.
Yeah, well, I think the idea behind Mandzukic, just from reading the reports about what's happening in the background, is that they've already they had agreed terms during the summer transfer window with him and they just couldn't get it over the line in time of the deadline. So it seems like they're fairly confident he's going to be one. But again,
would you be fairly confident?
Yeah. I'm not sure about United's transfer policy in the last couple of years, so it's hard to know. Mandzukic has also played in the left as well.
Yeah.
So he is he's more of a dynamic player than he's actually given credit for, because he has played out in the wing quite a bit for Juventus. But you would worry about the likes of Martial or Rashford playing second fiddle to him if he is that type of player. The likes of Zlatan, he wanted to be the main man. He's as self-centred as you can get, and that's probably why they had to do that. Martial had to give up his number because that's what he demanded.
It's very difficult
Whereas
to find a striker who's willing to come in and maybe play the Larson role that he did at Barcelona and that time he had on loan at Manchester United, where you've got a top quality striker who will sit on the bench 3 games out of 4 and will come in and do a job for you.
That's why I was surprised they didn't go for Llorente, who was a free transfer. Granted, they may have had to pay him a little bit extra in the wages, but they wouldn't have had to break their wage structure like they did with Alexis Sanchez, and they would have got him for free. So he has played that second role, so I was surprised United didn't go for him in the summer as well.
I have a sneaky feeling Daniel Levy's probably getting calls from United this winter as well, probably for Christian Eriksen and maybe for Tongan or Alderweireld as well.
You're going to say Harry Kane?
Nah, we're not Roy Keane here.
Just go get him.
220 million, don't worry, just make the offer. Bournemouth then, Enda, coming into this, they went October without a single victory in the league. They're in really bad form. From that point of view, you're looking at a away win here?
Yeah, they're in a bit of a rut, and Bournemouth tend to do this, but it's usually after the Christmas break that they do it. A couple of games they just can't seem to pick up results, but they were very unlucky against Watford the weekend. Cook hit the crossbar from a corner. They had a couple of good scoring chances that they just couldn't put away, which was very unlike them. I was reading there they have won just 2 of their last 11 home games as well, so you would worry about them, especially on the break, because they do like to get out and attack teams. So if United are going to play their counter-attacking play, then you would worry about Bournemouth in that sense. Midfield-wise, you'd think United again have the stronger of the 2 teams, but it's just up front. You think, if United aren't playing Harry Maguire, if Harry Maguire is out injured, Lindelof's also a doubt, so they might have Rojo and Phil Jones. So the likes of that,
got a chance,
you always have a chance scoring against that defence.
Yeah, good chance Bournemouth get goals tomorrow, Phil. But I suppose the only thing United fans might be clinging on to here is the fact the last few games where they have played well, it's been against teams who try and play football against you and who aren't maybe that solid at the back. Look at Norwich last week, look at the way Chelsea tried to outplay them, Liverpool. For some reason United seem to just be happier on the counter this season. Yeah,
well, they've got that pace that, Rashford, Martial, James are going to find space, so it would certainly suit them. And they don't have those players in midfield that can thread a ball through the eye of a needle, so obviously the more space they have, a more functional midfield can work. But in terms of Bournemouth, what has kind of served them so well in the Premier League under Eddie Howe is they tend to always beat teams in and around them, especially at home. So you kind of get a bit worried when they're not beating the likes of Norwich, or I know they were away to Watford. But every so often they do have a game where it can click. I just wonder, will tomorrow be that game? Probably not, but there's enough in that team that would give United a few problems. If Harry Wilson, he's been in and out of the team, but you saw against Man City what he can do from a dead ball. We know from an Irish point of view what he can do as well from free kicks. But Callum Wilson just can't seem to. It's not for the lack of trying. I don't think anyone's had more shots since his last goal without scoring. So I would be leaning towards United, but as I said, United are still going to have some bad performances, and they're going to tend to probably come away from home.
Well, as the philosopher Forrest Gump once said, you never know what you're going to get. Enda, in terms of tomorrow, Wolves going to Arsenal. Arsenal, extremely good entertainment value last weekend. VAR decisions, Xhaka throwing down the captain's armband, taking off his shirt, going down the tunnel, telling the supporters what he thought of their booing. Arsenal are in a bit of a mess going into this game, and this is a Wolves team who took 4 points from them last season.
Yeah, but Wolves haven't been very good in the league this year. They've only won 2 games so far, so it's hard to know which Wolves are going to turn up. It's the same. They're almost the same as Arsenal at this stage. I still think that Arsenal are struggling to find their first 11, their best first 11. We spoke about this last week. I know we spoke about Ozil, and I said that Ozil doesn't suit the game plan. He does. I still stand by that. He doesn't suit their game plan, but he showed during the week what quality he has, because that flick for I think it was their second goal of the game was just phenomenal. He was unbelievable. And the likes of Martinelli, we spoke about him here before as well. Kieran Tierney, Hector Bellerin, those are 3 or 4 good players that they aren't starting, and the likes of Torreira as well in midfield. You'd wonder, because Xhaka has been the main man for Emery in the midfield, and that's why Torreira's been out of the team. After the strop last week, is Torreira going to come into the team? I think it's a good thing if he does, because he just adds that little bit of bite, that little bit of energy that they've been missing in midfield. And they're going to need that against that Wolves midfield, because they're brilliant.
Phil, I can't imagine Jack is in any kind of mental state to play this weekend. Is he, given the statement that came out last night as well? No.
And the fact that it's back at the Emirates as well, and it'll be less than a week since he walked off the pitch, and I feel sorry for him for the criticism he's got, because he's trying his best, but unfortunately for him, he just hasn't really been very good for Arsenal. He has a certain style, and he has a very cultured left foot, and he can bang one in from 35 yards out, but he plays very, I wouldn't say one-dimensional, but he can, like the pace that he plays with, he lacks urgency at times. And
Torreira is more dynamic.
Absolutely, he's just like a little terrier, and he obviously scored a goal during the week as well against Liverpool. And I like Guendouzi. I think Guendouzi, when they were talking about who should the captain be, he was too young, I suppose, to be considered for it. But he has that, just not. I don't think he's nasty, but he's got a little streak in him. We saw that with the tackle on Zaha last week, which would have got him a sin bin if he was playing in the Rugby World Cup. But just that will to make sure that he knew if Zaha got in, that there was a good chance they concede, and he said, not happening on my watch. And I don't mind that there's a bit of steel there, and he'll do what it takes to make sure his team wins.
Shithousery.
Yeah, it was. It was
the Ramos.
Do you remember the tackle that David Luiz put in Guendouzi, pulled him down by the hair? You wouldn't have been surprised if that was the other way about.
Yeah.
That's the type of player Guendouzi is, but he can also play ball. He's an excellent
He can play ball, yeah. And that's, at times, what's happening is Jack is just standing there plodding around and passing the ball sideways, and then Guendouzi just takes the ball and decides, right, we need to turn this around, and did it against Villa a few weeks ago at the Emirates when they were in dire need of something, and he just took the bull by the horns, and he's certainly somebody that drives them on. I think the good news for Arsenal is, you think back to how Wolves beat Man City, and obviously Adama Traore scored both goals, but one of the key players that day was Willy Bolly. He was brilliant. Every ball that went into the box, he seemed to get his head on it. He's out injured, and Wolves just don't look as strong at the back without him. So I think Arsenal will probably have enough to win this. They have a really good record of 3 o'clock games on Saturday as well. They don't. I think the last time they lost one on a Saturday at 3 o'clock was 2013. It was the opening day of the season, and they lost. It was against Aston Villa, and ever since then, the Emirates has been a place where the crowd can turn very quickly. It looked like that had subsided last season. Obviously, Emery was new to the job, but the fact that there is still a lot of talk about is he the right man for the job, and like I said it about United, there was no quick fix. Like, things are going to take time to change with Arsenal. He's kind of building his team from the front, and obviously they're going to leak goals, and they're going to be great entertainment because look at them the other night. They're winning 4-2.
Maybe too entertaining for their fans. They should have shut up shop when they got the fifth.
But see, they just can't. They don't have the players to do that. So that's something that they're going to have to put up with for a while, and maybe in January or next summer they can recruit central defenders, but whether Unai Emery will be there to do it, we don't know.
And in terms of Arsenal up front, Aubameyang has hit this little cold run of form now. He hasn't scored in his last 3.
Yeah, but you know, he's been unlucky. He's had chances and he just hasn't been able to convert them. And to be honest, I'd be very slow to criticise Aubameyang. His record since he's come to the Premier League has matched his record in the Bundesliga that everyone was looking at, saying that he couldn't do it in England. He has done it in England. He has proven himself as a top striker. And with Pepe starting to come into form, or Nicolas Pepe, whatever you want to call him, with him starting to come into a bit of form, he's come under a lot of criticism. But you know what? He's been unlucky as well. Arsenal have had chances, they've just failed to convert them. So if they can just get their shots on target, I think they will get chances against Wolves, because, you know, while Wolves are a very good footballing side and defensively strong, especially when they have Bolly, the fact that Bolly is out injured, Arsenal can hit them very, very quickly and very hard on the counter-attack as well. So I would say Aubameyang, if he gets into the same positions as he always does, I would say he'll probably score.
How are you calling this one, Phil? I mean, Wolves have almost given a week to this because of the weekend team that they played midweek as well. Yeah. They've had this game in their sights.
Yeah, I think you're in a situation, if you're Wolves, you know, the longer the game stays scoreless, or if it's level, the more worried and the anxiety kind of kicks in at the Emirates. I said that crowd is almost baying for some blood, whether it's the captain or it's Unai Emery, and that'll certainly something Wolves can use against Arsenal. But I just think Arsenal are going to get plenty of chances. I'm thinking both teams. I'd be surprised if both teams didn't score on this one, but I'd be still thinking like Arsenal could win this one 2-1 or 3-1 maybe.
Well, it's 23 games since Arsenal haven't scored at home, and I think it was Man City last year, August last year.
That was the first weekend of the season.
Yeah, so they will score. It's just whether they can stop Wolves from scoring, and I doubt that as well.
Okay, well, moving on then.
Also.
Speaking of scoring, moving on to the game at the Etihad this weekend. Southampton probably sick of playing Man City, having to play them a couple of times in a week, albeit very different 11s are likely to play in both those games. Do you see any light for Southampton, given that they've taken a hammering, then beaten during the week, and in all likelihood going to take a hammering again tomorrow?
I don't think it'll be a hammering. I think they will be a bit smarter about the way they go about the play, because they'll be conscious of the 9-0 thrashing. Phil actually called a 7-0 thrashing.
Well,
after he called.
Were you hoping they'd declare when they got to 7 last night?
I have to hold my hand up, because I really fancied Southampton to give Leicester problems last week. So you can imagine when I'm sitting down to watch it last Friday night and the goal goes in, the red card, and I think, this is just going to end in tears. But I had said I think Southampton might actually give Leicester some problems, and then I said cue a 7-0 win for Leicester. But I said it joking.
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming. And Leicester, in fairness to them, have played 2 teams this season reduced to 10 men, and they've scored a combined 14 goals. So Brendan Rodgers
knows how to play against 10 men.
Yeah, well, I was watching them against Newcastle when they were scoring. They were thirsty for more goals. Yeah. So when they sniff blood at all, they'll go at you. But back to the Man City Southampton, the Southampton players were an absolute joke in that Leicester game. Even though you're down to 10 men,
They down tools.
They down tools. Like, they stopped playing. Some of those Leicester goals, they wouldn't have scored them if the Southampton players were in position and doing their job properly. There seems to be a lot of internal issues at Southampton at the minute, a bit of teething issues with the new owners. It appears that the owner's daughter has been thrust into a job that she didn't know anything about football. It's not her fault. She's doing her best, but she's trying to adjust to a new position. Les Reed has left the club. They have a new director of football, and they're just not producing the same amount of players as they were in previous years. It doesn't seem like their academy is as good as it once was. Their second team, or their reserve team, is second bottom of the under 23s Premier League, so there doesn't seem to be that amount of players coming through, and they just haven't recruited well either. They've gone away from that system of academy players coming through, selling high, and then buying quality players. They didn't buy quality this year, and they're really suffering for it.
Phil, I'm looking at goal score for this weekend. Raheem Sterling jumps out. 13 goals in 14 games, a couple of assists to add to that as well. He's just in red hot form in all competitions.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, he's going to be involved, certainly. And I think that the only thing from watching Southampton against City the other night, they definitely changed their approach. So if it took a 9-0 hammering maybe to press the reset button for Hasenhüttl and Southampton, maybe it's something they can push on, and they can look back and think that was the day that we realised what we were doing wasn't going to work. Now, I kind of found watching them, even before the goal against Leicester last week, that they just didn't seem to be playing with a plan, because Hasenhüttl, we know that he likes to play a pressing game, but they seem to sit quite deep against Leicester, and it doesn't really obviously suit a pressing game then if you're sitting deep. So against City, they actually squeezed up a little bit. Not that much now, but you still got plenty of men behind the ball. Shane Long just seemed to be chasing dead ends, unfortunately, for him. But at 2-0 at half-time, you kind of thought this could be a hammering. So what's a good result for Southampton tomorrow? If they come away losing 3 or 4-0, and they just have to then just park it and say, right, that's the City game done, now we can... But like I was looking at their fixtures, and you're looking at them and you're trying to make a case for them to win games. And I had high hopes for Hasenhüttl at the start of the season, because I thought, you know, he's now got a taste of Premier League. He knows the squad.
They good football the tail end of last season.
He'll have a fitter squad because he'll have done a pre-season with them. But yeah, it just seems like his message is not getting through to the players. And there has been talk about his messages. It's too complicated at times what he's trying to get the players to do, and they're struggling with it. But this is a perfect game for City. They win, and obviously, you know, you have the fact that Liverpool are playing at the same time.
Yeah. And
then it sets things up nicely next week for the game at Anfield, where City will be at least 6 points. That's the worst.
They're within 2 games no matter what happens.
Like best case scenario for City, they could be 3 points behind Liverpool going to Anfield.
What do you think, Enda? Can Aston Villa get something against Liverpool? Villa have a horrific home record against Liverpool going back over the last 15 years or so. They've only won once against them at Villa Park.
I don't think so. Again, cue a 3-0 Aston Villa win against Liverpool, but Aston Villa play the style of football that'll suit Liverpool down to the ground. And again, Liverpool are just showing signs of a team that are really going to push on to do great things. They seem like the City team last year when they were scraping results, big results though. They're like the 2-1 win against Tottenham. That could go down as one of the results that won Liverpool the title at the end of the year if they go on to do it. And they're starting to win dirty, and that's important, because when you come up against teams like Aston Villa, when you come up against these smaller teams, they're going to play more defensively naturally. And Aston Villa had a good chance to rest a couple of their players. They switched a couple of the midfielders up during the week, so they're going to be well rested for this Liverpool side. But I still think Liverpool have too much quality in that front three. They were so good against Tottenham again last week. Like, again, Firmino's starting to do these little flicks around the box, and he's going to win a few penalties by doing that as well. Mane, pretty lucky with the penalty, but he's doing enough to get there to win that penalty as well. So Liverpool can win this game dirty if they need to, but also I think they have too much quality that it's not really going to be a dirty game.
Okay, lightning round in terms of the rest of the fixtures before we get to the best for the weekend. Crystal Palace against Leicester, Phil. You know, 2 teams who've obviously started this season really well. They face off at Selhurst Park. Yeah,
Crystal Palace have a good record against Leicester, and they'll like this game. Leicester will try and play football, which will suit Palace, because, as I said, if you're playing possession football on one stray pass and you set yourself up to get hit on the counter-attack, Palace are one of the best teams at doing it. But funnily enough, there's certain games this season where I've thought Palace would be in with a great shout of winning games, and they don't get the result. So I kind of felt Palace would give City a really good test a few weeks ago, because City had no centre halves, and it was quite a comfortable afternoon for City. But no, I think this will be Leicester be doing well to come away with 3 points now. This is the famous last words from last week as well.
That's the first of our 2 live games on Off the Ball this coming Sunday as well. Also live this Sunday, Everton against Tottenham Enda. It would have seemed maybe a more glamorous fixture when the TV companies were picking out these fixtures earlier this year. But 2 teams who are both in relatively poor form here.
Yeah, they're back to where they were in the mid-noughties, and they're like struggling to get into the top half of the table. I think this is the first time they've met when both sides have been in the bottom side of the table since like 04 or something along those lines. So both sides are struggling for form. Everton, again, they were just so weak defensively against Brighton when they lost 3-2. So they were back to better form during the week. So it's just hard to tell where they're at the minute. It's going to be interesting to see whether Seamus Coleman comes back into the side though, because having rewatched
he's
the
well
Brighton
rested.
game, he played during the week, but he was suspended for the 2 league games. Having watched the Brighton-Tottenham game, Sidibe was out of position for one of the winning goal. First of all, he was sitting in centre midfielder for some reason, and for the in the first half they almost conceded when he got absolutely done by a 19-year-old in the box, and it was very close to being a second goal for Brighton.
True Donegal man thrashing Sidibe just to make sure the Coleman starts.
Seamus Coleman hasn't been bad this season.
Yeah.
I don't know why people think that he's one of the problems for Everton. They have much bigger problems than Seamus Coleman.
When Everton have played well, Coleman has generally played well too.
Yeah, bigger problem, Sidibe wears number 8. That's their big problem.
Our Paddy Power special odds for this weekend, lads. We've already kind of spoken about Liverpool and Arsenal, who I think both you are expecting to win. We surely, if you're chucking this together for a treble, you put a Chelsea win at Watford in there as well. It's been enhanced from 5-2 out to 7-2. Phil, to me that looks a decent bet.
Yeah, Chelsea. I actually fancied them to beat United. Even when I saw the teams, I just thought they were on a run of 7 in a row, and he made changes, but away from home they've been very impressive. Didn't think they put 4 past Burnley, so I think they're going to enjoy their trip to Vicarage Road.
Pulisic was very good against Burnley again.
Yeah, be interesting to see if he starts again after his hat-trick. And we'll take a look at what our odds, Paddy, then. Manchester United to miss 1 or more penalties in the game. Now, that happened last week, 14-1. You've been happy enough at Carrow Road. Could it happen again?
Well, they've been just winning a lot of penalties these days. I don't know if it has anything to do with Dan James being thrust down in the penalty box, but Rashford scored a nice one during the week, hit it hard and low, as you do. The 2 penalties last week were terrible. So,
but sure, Krul was miles off his line.
Krul loves a penalty.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why Van Gaal brought him on in that World Cup.
That's why he got the United job.
Yeah, but I don't want to get into a VAR chat, but I just don't get, like, you use VAR to give a penalty, and then Tim Krul is practically standing beside Marcus Rashford when he's taking the penalty, and they don't use it. But
all right, a couple of more bets to go through then. Phil, this is your old mate Hasenhüttl. If he gets into trouble, Big Sam to be the next Southampton manager, 6-1. Not touching it with your money.
Wouldn't go near. That would be... Now, Southampton, I thought they'd learned from Mark Hughes, but when you're desperate, you go through the phone and you're thinking, yeah, Big Sam, yeah, maybe, but nah.
And your old buddy Aubameyang, if he was to score against Wolves tomorrow, if he puts on a Halloween mask to celebrate, 100-1. Halloween's gone past them.
He used to do it all the time, but I'm wondering, because he missed Halloween in the fixtures, will he do it? We'll see.
Right, you need to get on to him and tell him to pack a Halloween mask into his sock. Gentlemen, thanks a million for joining us. Live games and Off the Ball this coming weekend. First one, Crystal Palace against Leicester, and then you can take Everton against Tottenham in on News Talk with Off the Ball as well. Thanks for joining us. We'll speak to you again next Friday.
The Paddy Power Half Hour on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Jeff and Heskey.